It was only a matter of time until Sonic the Hedgehog got bit by the open world bug. Sonic Frontiers brings the Blue Blur and his friends Amy and Tails to the Starfall Islands in search of Chaos Emeralds. But after a plane accident separates the trio, he must explore 5 ancient islands to find them, filled with remnants of a lost civilization along with a new threat led by a mysterious girl named Sage. So does Sonic's first open-world outing do for Sonic what Breath of the Wild did for Zelda? And more importantly, is it even fun? Well, I probably shouldn't describe Sonic Frontiers as open world because it's actually open zone. And it's not just a clever name, as instead of a singular open world like Breath of the Wild, Frontiers consists of multiple large open maps, closer in style to Halo Infinite. Each one is filled with familiar Sonic elements like grind rails, dash panels, springs, rings, enemies, and more. Oftentimes, these elements are arranged like a micro Sonic level with collectibles to find at the end, such as memory tokens, which you'll need to help save Sonic's friends from a cyberspace fate, which has them appearing as strange, digitized apparitions. Though you don't have to collect all the memory tokens, you'll still need a lot of them to progress through the story, amongst other collectibles like portal gears that open entrances to cyberspace, which are linear levels reflecting Sonic's past, modeled after classic stages like Green Hill and Chemical Plant Zone. Completing these stages in turn rewards vault keys, which you'll use to access the 7 Chaos Emeralds scattered about each zone, and eventually the final boss of each island. It's a simple enough gameplay loop, and at first, it's a very fun one. The core gameplay felt exciting and had me coming back for more. Running around at the speed of sound just feels good in an open setting, thanks to tight controls that made Sonic easy to handle even at high speeds. Sonic's movement is part of what makes the open zone sections my favorite in Sonic Frontiers. Exploring the islands to perform minor tasks for memory tokens is simple, but it's made fun by those smooth controls, and the worlds are filled with many things to find. The focus on exploration in Sonic is refreshing, and I found myself being constantly distracted by all the little activities you can do, just like in Breath of the Wild. When heading towards a waypoint, you might see a dash panel and wonder where it goes. Suddenly, you're on a new path leading to a memory token, but getting to it involves grinding rails, running up walls, and bouncing off an arrangement of springs. Pulling off the right moves in perfect succession without falling off makes these mini-courses satisfying to run through. There's great variety in them as well, and I never encountered the same one twice. Some of them lock the game into a 2D perspective, which can be cool, though also frustrating, as it's easy to accidentally end up in a 2D section that you can't break out of until you either complete it or fall off, and it can be a bit jarring swapping between the two. Alongside them are a ton of mini challenges scattered all over each zone, and they're basically the Korok seeds of this game, in that they consist of a simple puzzle or challenge like jumping on buttons, running on a treadmill, walking on tiles in the correct order, shooting a ball through rings, racing to a finish line, or playing jump rope. Though, unlike Korok seeds, the reward for completing them is arguably more useful, as each one fills in blank spots on the map, while some also spawn additional elements in the zone, like long grind rails that get you across the islands faster. Although they're not very challenging, I enjoyed this more creative take on filling in the map as compared to, say, finding watchtowers in other open-world games. I often made it my goal to beat these challenges first, as revealing the entire map unlocked fast travel between cyberspace portals. For better or worse, these elements are basically all there is to find. It's not like Breath of the Wild where you'd be surprised constantly, like say stumbling upon an abandoned house that contains a valuable weapon. Instead, it's more akin to Super Mario Odyssey, where you'd go around looking for the same few collectibles while completing little levels or simple puzzles. It may not be as visually varied as Odyssey, but if you're a fan of that constantly rewarding gameplay style mixed with Sonic's speed, then you might have a great time with this open zone gameplay. All these little activities gave me a positive first impression of Sonic Frontiers, as it was very fun and kept me hooked for a while. Unfortunately, there's a lot of baffling design flaws along the way that drag the overall experience down over time. Let's start with the cyberspace stages, which are projections of Sonic's memories and a way to revisit the boost formula, which came from games like Sonic Unleashed, Colors, and Generations, which were focused on propelling Sonic forward along mostly linear stages to get to the goal. Although I was disappointed that only 4 zones are represented here, being Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and a city highway theme, the main problem is that they don't feel as good now as they did back in the boost formula Sonic games, being slower with poorer handling as the movement from the open zones doesn't translate well into the linear stages. There's a lack of weight and momentum in these levels that makes Sonic feel floatier and harder to control. It's still manageable and I was able to get S-rank timing in all the stages, but they're definitely not as satisfying as the ones from the traditional boost games. They are especially worse in the 2D stages, as you can really feel how slow and floaty Sonic is here. These levels are quite short, clocking in around a couple of minutes, though each one will likely require multiple playthroughs if you want to beat all 4 challenges in them, like getting a certain number of rings, collecting all the red star rings, and attaining an S-rank time. Thankfully, you only need to beat them once to proceed, but completing all these challenges will net more vault keys, allowing you to get Chaos Emeralds faster. Simply put, the cyberspace levels are passable at best. There are 7 to 9 of them on each island, and rather than being a break from the open zone gameplay, they detract from it, and I wasn't that excited to jump into a new one. They didn't replicate the fun exhilaration of boost formula Sonic games, and that's mainly due to the floaty controls that work better in the open zones. Plus, the annoyingly repetitive techno tracks got under my skin when replaying a stage over and over again. Beyond platforming, you'll also encounter enemies out in the open zones, and this is where the game's new combat system comes into play. Unfortunately, it's a mixed bag. Sonic's homing attack returns, but now players can keep pressing square to unleash a barrage of kicks and punches, and they can also unlock new moves, like a Sonic Boom, which unleashes shockwaves mid-air, and Wild Rush that turns Sonic the Hedgehog into Sonic the Torpedo. In addition, you can also parry attacks by holding both shoulder buttons, but since timing literally doesn't matter, it feels kind of cheap, as any attack can be easily countered. I still found the fights to be fun, albeit a bit mindless, as it doesn't really matter which moves you use. Because a lot of these powers don't have limitations, they can be used whenever you want, though some later skills are restricted by a meter, which does add some balance. Activating some of these powers requires holding a trigger or shoulder button and then pressing one of the face buttons, and I couldn't remember which button combo was tied to which move, so I activated a lot of them by accident. That didn't matter though, as there isn't much strategy needed to fight most of the usual enemies, which might be why one of the skills you can unlock lets the game handle all the combos for you if you prefer to avoid memorizing them yourself, even though it probably should have been an accessibility setting instead. However, some enemies require an extra step, as they may put up a shield that can only be removed with Sonic's new ability called Psyloop, which also plays a key part in some of the game's puzzles. By holding triangle, you can draw energy-based circles to either stun an enemy and remove their shield, or initiate a puzzle. Basically, if you're not sure what to do in any given situation, try running Psyloop around an object, it's bound to do something. Psyloop is actually the first of several moves you'll unlock using the skill tree, which is surprisingly small and filled with strange abilities, like one where Sonic does tricks in the air to earn XP. Even then, I unlocked everything by the second island, and the hundreds of XP tokens I've gathered from beating enemies since then have just sat there unused, which is a strange oversight. In any case, Sonic will encounter a diverse set of enemies that range from creative overworld bosses to frustrating nuisances better off ignored. What's unfortunate is that even some of those creative enemies aren't very fun to fight due to frustrating design choices. Asura is one of the first overworld bosses, and Sonic has to run up its 3 arms to access its weak points on top. You have to repeat this loop 3 times, and it can be extremely irritating if you don't make it to the top in time, or if you fall off and have to complete that step over again. Later bosses can also be tricky thanks to some strange mechanics. One of these, called a squid, flies over the map, leaving behind a trail that Sonic can run on. But because there's only a couple of points on the island where Sonic can jump on this trail, missing it means either waiting until the creature makes another loop, or chasing after it to try and find that second spot in time, which can be annoying. Fortunately, I've had better times with other enemies, like one called Strider that laid out rails leading to its core for me to attack. It was a Sonic level in and of itself, and I admired its clever use of grind rails. Sumo is another fun enemy, as it would generate a fence around it and Sonic. The solution was to spin dash off of the fence, hitting the enemy into an electrified part, thus stunning and leaving it open to attack. It's an innovative way to take advantage of Sonic's spin dash move. So even if their names and designs are generic, some of the overworld bosses in Sonic Frontiers are creative in their abilities, whereas there are others that are just plain frustrating and kind of a bore. The shark being a great example, because most of its fight is spent riding its tail and completing QTEs waiting for a weak point to open up, which can take as long as a minute. And no matter how big these overworld bosses get, they all drop the same reward, a single portal gear. So it's not like you're getting anything particularly unique from beating these bosses. These big overworld enemies are still more fascinating than the regular minion, which I just started to ignore in the latter half of my playthrough as I got tired of having to use Psyloop to defeat them. Luckily, I acquired a move later which made Psyloop faster at the press of a button, but I still vouched to ignore these dudes and press on through the main quest. What can't be ignored though are the major bosses that come after collecting all the Chaos Emeralds in each zone. Usually these titans are holding on to the 7th Chaos Emerald, so Sonic has to climb to the top of them to find it and then unleash his supersonic form to finish them off. While Sonic may be super here, these boss battles are anything but. He flies around the enemies throwing punches at their head, and the camera moves in such a jerky motion that it's hard to make sense of what's happening. Whenever Supersonic gets knocked back, for instance, the camera focuses on him instead of the boss, making it impossible to see the boss's next attack that follows shortly after. Once you realize the battles are literally just parry, attack, QTE, repeat, you've got it all figured out. At the very least, they're pretty impressive to look at once the camera stops shaking and focuses on Supersonic throwing the Titans' weapons back at them to the sound of legit rock music. In spite of those few redeeming qualities, these bosses are an absolute mess, and I am amazed that Sonic Team dropped the ball on them, which sadly also includes the final one. Of course, if you want to get through these painful battles faster, the best way to do that is by upgrading Sonic with the help of the Starfall Island's inhabitants, the Coco. You can find these little beings all throughout the island, and giving them back to the Elder Coco will reward you with the choice of upgrading either Sonic's ring capacity or his top speed. And I almost always chose the latter, since it's beneficial for traversal and some boss battles. Whereas increasing your ring capacity actually makes things more difficult, since Sonic gets a major speed boost when he carries the full amount of rings he can. So it would take longer to get to that boost with a greater ring capacity. You can collect power and defense seeds to give to the Hermit Coco, who will take them and grow Sonic's power and defense. The latter will prevent as many rings from dropping when getting hit. The Hermit Coco can even transfer some ring capacity to increase Sonic's speed and vice versa. These seeds can be acquired upon beating challenges, and some of them are hidden throughout the world. I found this upgrade system rewarding and motivating for me to keep playing the game, but I didn't visit the Elder Coco often, so when I collected a large amount of Coco to give him, I'd be stuck there for a good 5 minutes while he kept asking me if I wanted to upgrade my speed or ring capacity next. Yes, he could only do one at a time. But hey, at least Big the Cat's back, right?
Big? What are you doing here? How did you get here? What even is here?
I don't know. I was looking for fishing spots and wound up here.
One portal in each island leads to a fishing minigame led by Big, and you can spend purple coins found throughout the game's world to catch fish like salmon, hammerhead sharks, coelacanths, typical pond fish. These catches will net green coins and golden tickets you can spend on collectibles like memory tokens, Coco, power and defense seeds, and these items called egg memos that I haven't figured out how to use. Because I always entered these ponds with tons of purple coins and won so many green coins, this minigame felt less like a game and more so an item farming simulator. One time I needed a 75 memory tokens to progress through the story, and instead of getting them the usual way in the open zone, I just went fishing and got them all in less than 5 minutes. It helps that the game is obscenely easy too, just clicking X when the fish bites and clicking it again to hook them in a simple QTE. As nice as it is having Big the Cat return, his fishing minigame is a cheap way to level up and finish Sonic Frontiers faster. I was able to get so many purple fishing coins because every few nights on the islands, a meteor shower drops star pieces and resurrects enemies, and it initiates a slot machine that Sonic can activate by collecting these fallen star pieces, rewarding him with Coco, purple fishing coins, and I hate this. I hate hate this. Why is this here? All it does is interrupt the game and crowd the HUD, making it harder to see the things that actually matter. It's not helpful, it's annoying. I may have gotten a lot of coins out of it, but there has to have been a better way to get them than this. There was even a moment during this where I activated a time trial and the timer displayed over the slot machine. This brings me to the next problem in Sonic Frontiers. The UI design is horrendous, most notably in the pause menu, where navigation is a cumbersome process. It's not enough to press left or right to change submenus, as you have to press X to select the submenu you want to go to. It's not enough for that menu to already be there on screen, you have to select it. It makes going through these menus slow and tedious, but it doesn't stop there. After unlocking fast travel, you can warp to any portal location, so you'd think hovering the cursor over these portals and hitting X to fast travel to them would work, right? Wrong. You have to go to the fast travel submenu in order to do that, and it isn't made clear that this menu even exists. So I spent most of the game wondering how the heck to get fast travel working. It seems like the team responsible for UI never played an open world game before, because a feature as simple as fast travel should not have this many extra steps to it. Now, as for the graphics, Sonic Frontiers looks fine. The islands are highly detailed, but there's nothing I'd describe as memorable in these places, as they look like fairly generic grasslands, deserts, and volcanic mountains. Other than some pretty cool sights, there's nothing that really stands out creatively about these islands. I played the game on PS5 with 60 FPS mode turned on, and I didn't see any significant dips in frame rate, but I did see a ton of pop-in from objects further away to ones right next to me. I turned on 4K mode to see if this issue was lessened, and it looked about the same. It's not anything that ruined my experience, but it was certainly distracting. For a game all about speed, I highly recommend the 60 FPS mode, as it makes the game feel more responsive. If there were any frame rate dips in this setting, I barely even noticed them. I didn't find that the 4K mode improved the visuals that much, and it certainly wasn't worth the trade-off of half the frame rate, which not even motion blur could make up for. Music-wise, the tracks in the open zones are lighter in tone than the cyberspace levels, lending a calmer, relaxing feel. It's still a bit repetitive, but it doesn't make me want to pull my hair out, at least. If you're looking for something more energetic, that's saved for the music during the supersonic battles, which are reminiscent of 2000s pop rock, appropriate for a Sonic game. Can't say I've heard anything as iconic as the adventure tracks, but it's still good music I can bop my head to at any time. Finally, there's the story, which tries, but ultimately fails to be impactful. The main focuses of Sonic Frontiers are the mystery of the Starfall Islands, the ancient race of beings who previously inhabited them, and the girl Sage who's been preventing Sonic from completing his mission. All of these plot lines are resolved at the end in the most anticlimactic way possible. There's even a forced emotional moment with Sage, but it isn't earned in the slightest. Most of the game's plot involves Sonic talking with his friends, trying to figure out what's going on, and that's it. They make some references to past games like the Adventure series, but unlike in those games, they don't go through any development at all in this one. While most people don't play Sonic games for their story, it was clear that Sonic Team was trying to do something special with Frontiers by hiring Sonic comics writer Ian Flynn to pen the script. But the end result is a fumbled plot that fails to gauge even the slightest bit of interest from the audience. Heck, the 6-minute animated prologue featuring Knuckles was more engaging than the entire game's story. What also doesn't help are the stiffly animated cutscenes and oddly bored-sounding voice performances, which is strange given that these voice actors have played these characters way better before. It's as if they were told to sound more natural, but now just come across as distant and uninterested. Even Mike Pollock, who's been playing Dr. Eggman for nearly 20 years, doesn't deliver the energetically maniacal performance we've come to expect from him. If that wasn't enough, the entire experience ends with a whimper instead of a bang. The final boss comes out of nowhere and lacks any sense of build-up, and there's not even a sense of catharsis afterward since it boils down to an abrupt quick-time event. That, combined with a story that completely fizzles out, really soured me on not just the story, but the overall experience, as it lacks a sense of finality. It feels unfinished, and it left me feeling like it was all for nothing, which is painful to see after all the 3D Sonic games that have delivered satisfying and memorable conclusions. I really wanted to like Sonic Frontiers, and for a while I did. Although it makes a strong first impression with its novel open zone gameplay filled with simply fun challenges, a plethora of unwise decisions ultimately holds a Sonic Frontiers back from greatness. The cyberspace levels are disappointing, lacking the speed and momentum in the boost formula games. Not to mention the story is awful, coming across like an afterthought probably because it was. But what's really heartbreaking is that after 19 hours of playing, the stuff I originally found fun grew stale as the gameplay loop repeated throughout each zone. Collecting the memory tokens was enjoyable at first, until I looked at the map and saw how many of them were left. And here I thought Breath of the Wild had too many Korok seeds. As a result, I'm sadly mixed on Sonic Frontiers. Though it's a step above Sonic Forces with a promising foundation, there's a lot the development team has to figure out to make this open zone format work for future titles, assuming more open zone ones are coming. Sonic Frontiers proves Sonic can work in an open environment, as proven by the obstacle courses and challenges placed throughout each island. But there just has to be a way to prevent these tasks from getting stale over time without the distractions of subpar cyberspace levels and fishing minigames. Sonic Frontiers has some good ideas mixed with a lot of bad ones, but the good ideas are good enough that they can hopefully be expanded upon in future Sonic games.
Whoa, hold the phone, Joey!
Oh, hi Andre, didn't know we were using 1940s catchphrases again.
Is that how you talk to your elder, Sonny? Okay, look, I actually agree with a lot of the things you said in the review, but despite all of that, I actually ended up having a really good time with this game, and I'm not even that big of a Sonic fan, as Toe can attest to!
Please help me?
I mean, yeah, I can see why. I'm expecting this game is going to be quite polarizing because it does some things really well, but other people might be turned off by its shortcomings.
How about this, Joey? Let's have a live debate about this. I want to discuss with you live in front of our audience how good this game actually is or may not be. I think it'd be a lot of fun. What do you say?
Let's do it. And in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching my review of Sonic Frontiers. Tell me though, do you still plan on picking the game up? Let me know in the comments below, and check out the videos on the right for more topics you might be interested in. Until next time, bye.